Alright, in this video, part 4, we're going to talk about our network resources and several options that we have for sharing resources over a private network. We have our work groups, home groups, and domains. We tend not to share resources over public networks such as the public hotspots or internet, right? So we're not, you don't share, you don't turn on sharing on those networks. But on our private networks, internal networks, we do enable sharing, and we have 3 options to share those resources. So first 2 are our work groups and home groups. Windows workgroups and home groups work as a peer-to-peer network. Means that there is no centralized control or management. Every system manages their own resources. In a Windows workgroup, each system must maintain all user accounts and access rights that they have on the computer. For example, if you have a workgroup with 10 employees and 12 computers, every computer must have an employee account created on it if that employee is going to access any resources on that computer, either directly or remotely. So let's say everyone needs access to every computer for some reason. That would mean that you would need to create 10 user accounts on each and every computer for a total of 120 different user accounts. If you need to change one of the employees' passwords, you would have to log into all 12 computers and change the user passwords, because there's no centralized management of users. There's, each device, each system has its own users. With a work group, though, you are able to give access to certain files to one or more employees. You have very granular access for security controls over the resources. You just need to define this access on each computer for each user. Home groups, though, are a little easier. Each computer shares everything, and anyone within that knows the home group password gains access to all files, folders, libraries, and printers that are on that computer. You can't say, Bob has access to the printer and Sally can access these files. It's all or nothing in the home group. So the home group, anybody that knows the password gets access to everything, which could be okay, and it makes it a little easier to manage than a work group. But if you need different levels of security for different level of files and folders, say like payroll, things like that, you would need the work group scenario at a minimum, although we'll talk about the domain option, which is much more preferred for any business of any size. If you start getting over 10 people, even 20 for sure, but 10, it gets hard to manage in this peer-to-peer network. And here's an example of a Windows work group with all the connections to everybody has connections to everybody. But if, say, someone on one of the Windows 8 systems needs access to the Windows 10 system, that Word document, they can get access to it, but they have to have a user account on the Windows 10 machine and the Windows 8 machine to be able to access it. So it gets very complicated really fast as you see all those lines drawn, and to manage a very minimal size amounts of computers. Like I said, I think anything over 10 you're definitely not going to want to be in a work group or home group mode. Maybe a home group if everybody can have access to everything. But after that, I would recommend going to a domain, because there's no centralized control. It's not easy to manage any amount of machines. So that brings us to a Windows domain. It provides us that centralized control and centralized management of our resources. If you have 10 employees and 12 computers, you only need to create 10 user accounts. They get shared and controlled by the central domain. You can define groups and place users in the groups, and then assign access to computers based off groups. And thus, it's easy to change. It's easy to change a user password. You can do it from any computer in the network, and it only needs to be changed once, as there's only one account. You can remove access by simply removing a user from a group that provided that access. And again, this can be done from any computer, as the groups and accounts are stored and managed within Active Directory, which is the centralized database that controls it. So Windows domain is a client-server network, right? All the clients are the workstations that users are using, and then you have at least one, preferably several servers. Preferably at least two. You have a backup domain controller, and the servers are the central repository of all the user accounts and information for that domain that all the other machines use and leverage. So it makes it much easier to manage. There are two options for managing a domain. There's the on-premise option, where you own your own servers and you install Active Directory locally. It's a local Active Directory. And the other is in the cloud with Azure Active Directory, where you run off Microsoft servers, and they manage the environment, but you manage your servers. And you can manage your users and that from the cloud, from Azure. And here, this is a way to join the domain, right? I showed you this a little earlier. Got a little ahead of myself in the settings folder. This is one way. So go to settings, select accounts, access work or school. Let's just see here. Let's go and pull up settings, right? Accounts. Select access work or schools, then we would connect, and then you can, this is a bring your own device, which we're not looking at, but we have the two join options to join an Azure Active Directory, or we have our own on-premise Active Directory. That's one way to join. Another is we can right click on this PC, go to properties in our system windows, right? There's this change settings, and we can change our network ID, to join a domain or work group. We could also use the change button. So if we do this, right, we can say this is a business network and I connect to others, and it will walk you through joining the domain. Or if you have the information and know what you're doing, you can just do change, and then you can join a domain and then type in the path to the domain. This is the way I prefer to do it. It's very simple, quick, and easy, but you need to know what you're doing with that one, whereas this network ID will walk you through it. Alright, but to join the domain, you'll need to have a user account with permissions that is allowed to join a computer to the domain. Typically, this is a domain admin. They have the ability, but you can also delegate what's called delegate control of just that right to a group, and then you add the users to the group. You should never assign permissions directly to a user. You can. Active Directory does allow you to do this. It's just very bad practice. Best practice is always assign permissions and rights to groups, because then it's easy to control who has access, and who has access because they're a member of the group, and you know which groups have what access. And it's just much cleaner, more safe and secure. So you always assign permissions and rights to groups, not users. Once you have an account open, the system windows, right? So, right, and you can do, um, like I said, this change settings, yeah, uh, and the network ID, right? You can do either one to join the domain. Windows 10 offers three types of network security zones: public networks, which are very controlled. It has strong security controls, and you cannot join a work group, home group, or domain off a public network. Private networks, they relax security a bit, and you can join a work group, home group, or domain. It makes it easier to share files and printers because you're on a private domain or private network. And then a domain network provides centralized control over authenticated users, sharing files, folders, and printers. And so that is our network resource sharing. So, right, we had our work groups, home groups, and domains, with domains being the best fit for most organizations due to the centralized control. All right, I'm going to stop recording here, and I will see you in the next video, and we'll go into some more customer service facets of Chapter 11.